Ever feel like you're playing a part, dressing a certain way or acting a certain way just to fit in? You're told it's expressing yourself, but somehow it just feels like another uniform. What if the most rebellious and inspiring thing you can do is to figure out who you are when no one is watching? Let's talk about how to find that person. The verse opens by immediately introducing us to Caroline, a character defined by a specific, almost performative emotion. She laughs. But this isn't set against a sunny backdrop. Instead, it's raining all day. This creates a powerful contrast that sets the tone for her entire character. Her laughter feels like an attempt to brighten a persistently gloomy reality, suggesting that her cheerfulness might be a defense mechanism or a carefully maintained facade. The line, "she loves to be one of the girls," reinforces this idea of performance. It speaks to a deep desire for belonging and normalcy, to fit into a social group where she might feel accepted and safe. The lyrics then delve into Caroline's place in the world, which is described as the place in the side of our lives where nothing is ever put straight. This is a brilliant piece of writing. It positions her not at the center of the action, but on the periphery, an observer or a side character in other people's stories. Her world is inherently messy, chaotic, and unresolved. Nothing is ever put straight. She exists in a space of uncertainty, never quite achieving the order or stability she might see in others. This makes her relatable. She represents that part of everyone's life that feels unfinished and confusing. The verse takes a poignant turn when Caroline turns and delivers what feels like a moment of stark self-awareness. "This is it. That's the end of the joke." This line is heavy with resignation. It implies that she understands the performative aspect of her own life. She sees the joke, perhaps the futility of trying to fit in, the sadness behind her constant laughter, or the way others might perceive her. Declaring it the end suggests a moment of giving up the act, of being too tired to keep pretending everything is okay. Finally, she escapes this reality by losing herself in her dreaming and sleep, which is a quiet and sad form of retreat. The final image, "and her lovers walk through in their coats," is particularly isolating. These lovers aren't staying. They are transient figures, literally keeping their coats on as they pass through her life. It emphasizes her loneliness and the lack of deep, lasting connection, even in her most intimate moments. They are just visitors in the chaotic, peripheral world she inhabits. The chorus, with its deceptively simple and repetitive lines, is where the song's central irony and critical message become crystal clear. On the surface, "she's pretty in pink" sounds like a straightforward compliment, the kind of thing someone might say to affirm a person's appearance. However, the context from the verse completely reframes this. This isn't a celebration of her true self. It's an observation of her as an object, an aesthetic. The color pink is traditionally associated with femininity, delicacy, and conformity to a certain girlish ideal. By reducing her to this single pretty attribute, the chorus highlights how she is being perceived from the outside, not as a complex, struggling person, but as a pleasing image. The repetition of the question, "isn't she?" is the most crucial part. It's not a genuine question seeking an answer. It's a rhetorical one that seeks agreement from a crowd. It mimics the sound of casual, almost gossipy conversation, where people are quick to label and judge based on shallow appearances. This group validation underscores the social pressure to conform. Caroline isn't just trying to be pretty for herself. She's performing to meet an external expectation to be found pretty by others so that she can belong. The chorus acts like a mirror reflecting back the very superficial judgment that the verses show is causing her inner loneliness. Ultimately, the chorus is deeply sad because it points out the gap between how Caroline is seen and who she truly is. The world sees a girl who is pretty in pink and assumes that's the whole story. They don't see the rain, the messy side of her life, the performative laughter, or the transient lovers. The song argues that being labeled and admired for your surface level conformity doesn't cure isolation. It can actually create it because you're being appreciated for a costume, not for your real complicated self. The praise is empty, and the chorus delivers that hollowness through its catchy sing-song repetition. This verse shifts the perspective away from Caroline's internal world and instead holds a mirror up to the people in her life, her lovers, and in doing so, it reveals their profound emptiness and hypocrisy. The verse opens with them talking, but what they're talking about is telling. Her notes and the flowers that they never sent. This immediately establishes them as nostalgic and full of regret, but it's a selfish, performative regret. They are more focused on their own failed gestures, the flowers they didn't send, and the mementos she left behind, her notes, than on Caroline herself as a person. This is followed by the crass, degrading question, and wasn't she easy? Which reduces their entire past relationship with her to a conquest, completely stripping it of any emotional meaning and highlighting their disrespectful and shallow nature. The verse then brilliantly exposes the ultimate irony of their behavior. One lover in particular insists he was first in the line, trying to claim a position of primacy and importance in her history, yet he is the last to remember her name. This is a powerful contradiction that shows his supposed affection is entirely about his own ego, not about genuine care for her. He wants the status of being her first lover, but can't even be bothered to hold onto the most fundamental marker of her identity. The most haunting image comes next. He's walking around in this dress that she wore. This man, who spoke of her with such disrespect, is now literally cloaking himself in her identity. He's wearing her clothes, perhaps as a token of remembrance, but it feels more like a hollow costume, a weird appropriation of her essence by someone who never truly understood it. The final line, "She's gone, but the joke's the same," serves as the devastating conclusion to this entire scene. Caroline has left, whether physically or emotionally, escaping the toxic environment these men created. But the joke, the cruel cyclical pattern of superficial judgment, empty conquest, and selfish nostalgia continues without her. The joke was never really on her. It's on them, trapped in their own shallow existences, repeating the same pathetic behaviors with a new person. The verse argues that while Caroline was victimized by this superficiality, she had the awareness to see it as a joke and eventually leave it behind. Her lovers, however, are doomed to keep living it, forever missing the point and the person they never truly knew. This final verse brings us into a more intimate, yet equally fraught moment with Caroline. The line, "Caroline talks to you softly sometimes," suggests a rare moment of genuine connection, a departure from the performative laughter of the first verse. She expresses affection, but even this is tinged with a sense of overwhelming intensity or imbalance with the words "I love you" and "too much." This hints that her capacity for love might be all-consuming, perhaps desperate, and potentially too much for the superficial people she attracts. This is immediately followed by a line that cuts to the core of her perceived value. She doesn't have anything you want to steal. Well, nothing you can touch. This brilliantly summarizes how the world sees her. She possesses no material wealth or status worth taking, and her true self, her emotions, her vulnerabilities, are intangible and thus hold no value to those who only deal in surface-level transactions. She is seen as having nothing of substance to offer. The actions described next are tender but carry a deep sense of finality and service. She waves, buttons your shirt, and hands you your coat. These are acts of care, but they also feel like the preparations of someone helping a guest get ready to leave. She is facilitating the departure, actively participating in her own abandonment. The traffic waiting outside symbolizes the impatient outside world and its demands, which will inevitably pull this person away from her. The dynamic is clear. Her world is a temporary stop, a side room, and everyone is just passing through. The closing line, "She gives you her clothes, these cars collide," is a powerful and chaotic climax to the song. "She gives you her clothes" is the ultimate act of self-surrender. It's more profound than the lover from verse 2 merely taking a dress. Here, she is actively giving away pieces of her very identity. But this act of extreme vulnerability is met with violent external chaos. These cars collide. This collision can be interpreted in a few ways. It could be the literal crash of the outside world intruding, the metaphorical crash of her inner self as she gives too much of herself away, or the violent clash between her deep need for connection and the shallow, transactional nature of her relationships. It's the moment where her soft, internal world is shattered by the harsh, uncaring reality outside. The verse ends not with a resolution, but with this catastrophic impact, leaving the aftermath of her emotional surrender hanging in the air. The outro abandons the narrative of Caroline for a more abstract and chaotic rant that broadens the song's critique from one person's experience to a universal attack on false identity and societal pressure. It opens with a jarring image. Caroline's on the table screaming. This feels like a final, desperate breakdown. The table could be an operating table, a therapist's couch, or simply a stage, a place where she is being examined, dissected, or put on display. Her scream is the raw, unfiltered truth of her pain, breaking through the pretty pink facade. This is immediately contrasted with "confidence is in the sea," suggesting that any real sense of self-assurance has been drowned, lost in a vast, deep, and overwhelming force. The lyrics then shift to a more general "they," pointing a finger at the faceless forces of society and conformity. All their favorite rags are worn, suggests that the trendy clothes, the uniforms of rebellion or style that people adopt to feel unique, are actually just tired, worn-out costumes. This is the central irony the outro exposes. They kid you you're really free and you know what you want to be, a case of individuality. This brilliantly captures the scam of consumer culture and subcultures. You're sold the idea that Buying the right clothes or adopting a certain style is an act of rebellion and self expression, when in reality, you're just putting on another pre made uniform. You're not finding true individuality. You're just choosing a different prepackaged identity from the rack. The closing lines are a surreal and haunting picture of this hollow existence. Everything you are, you'll see in pure shiny buttons, reduces a person's entire being to the superficial gleam of their costume's accessories. They put you in this gear confirms the passivity of the individual. You are dressed by society, not yourself. The final images, driveways broken, a doorbell that plays the tune, anything goes, and bells that toll in rhyme, create a sense of absurdity and decay. The broken driveway symbolizes a path that leads nowhere. The doorbell playing anything goes is a dark joke. It suggests a world where all values are meaningless and all identities are for sale, all while maintaining a cheerful, melodic facade. And the bells that toll in rhyme don't signal a death, but a predictable, monotonous, and poetic conformity. It's not a funeral dirge. It's a catchy, rhyming jingle for a life lived in a cage that's been mislabeled as freedom. The outro argues that the pressure to be pretty in pink or to adopt any identity to fit in is a trap that ultimately destroys the true self, leaving only a screaming ghost inside a shiny, buttoned up uniform.